Block 5. So I'd like to call the order the Conduct City Council on a work session. It is Monday, January 12th, 2026. And I ask our city recorder, please call roll.
Councilor Parsons?
Here.
Councilor Cross?
Here.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Council President Starr? Councilor Christopher?
Here.
Councilor Duran?
Here.
Councilor Kohler?
Here, I can barely hear you though.
Okay, we'll speak up. All right, and then with us today from Sports Facilities, introduce everybody who is here and on the screen.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Cross. Mike Higgins, I've met everyone, I think you know me pretty well by now. But also on our team, our senior vice president, my boss, Jack Adams. Jack, there he is. Josh Callahan, council member Starr, if you remember Josh, he was part of the RFP group that came in to Jack. Josh is vice president and ultimately the West Coast, so he'll manage. When we do hire a general manager, work under Josh's direction, eventually, and then of course, you guys know Billy really well. He's sad he couldn't be here tonight, but we'll hear from him a lot on his calls. We'll go back to you.
All right, thank you very much. So what we have before us is a list of the items for the sports facilities to talk from tonight, and council is here. There's a couple of items where it talks about second discussion and vision, and that'll be important for us in the context of what we're talking about here tonight, understand how that will interact with the nuts and bolts of the contract and the operations for this coming year. With that, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Brown and to you, Mike, to figure out who can vote first.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Good to be here with you. And we have a schedule in front of us of some talking points. And as Mr. Higgins leads us through that, I just want to tell you on the staff side what we put into the assumptions for the pro forma that was presented to you. So you know, as a starting point, okay, this is where we thought, and then there's some things where I think you'll want to lean on their expertise for price setting based on their knowledge, and also some of the discussions with that we've had back and forth with McNair Youth Baseball and Kaiser Little League. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Higgins, and then as we go through each book, it's probably if you want to kick it back to me and say, okay, this is the assumptions we used, and here's some points of decision that you guys need to make on that. And you can either endorse the decisions we made for that establish the pro forma, or you can change those. So it's in the big area.
Mr. Brown, thank you, Mayor. One of the things I wanted to mention, I mean, typically the process, and I don't know, we'll hear kind of move on. Typically when we start a contract, get signed, and then we would start working with typically city staff, but I think if you kind of back up to last Monday's meeting, I think y'all remember that meeting. But at the meeting, it was brought up that we would do the work session tonight, really to get you guys comfortable. And so we want to make this just a roll up your sleeves. If you have a question about something, ask it. And, it's really great to hear your vision, so what, typically when we launch these relationships, we're trying to deliver for our client, the city, ultimately the city politicians, and what your mission is. So when we hear that, the more we know, the better we can deliver. With that, I throw to Billy first. And he's going to talk about just kind of how we work as a company and how we support the general manager that we hire, what's behind, what's in our support center in Clearwater, and how we support staff here.
Yeah, and I know it's been, and good evening, everybody, and thanks for having us again. Sorry I can't be there in person. usually we come into venues in two different ways, either venues that are under development or venues that are existing. In this case, Kaiser being an existing venue, typically we have two roadmaps in starting off the relationship. Usually it's some type of pre-opening process. We're getting ready for a new venue, and then a transition process. And a lot of those processes for us are very similar. And so we typically have an internal kickoff with our support team that oversees everything from sales and marketing to HR to legal to food and beverage, all of those different aspects. And then we also have an external kickoff, and we want to obviously use this time tonight a little bit as that external kickoff to, as Mike said, get a level of comfortability with our process and help understand, get a little deeper on making sure that we're aligned on the goals for the complex, for the community, and how we're going to drive this thing forward to meet those goals and create success. And so we have Jack Adams here with us tonight. Jack leads all of our transition for existing venues when we go in and partner with the community. Jack works hand in hand through those processes to make sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and that we're putting our systems and bringing our systems and putting those in place to make sure that we get that we're driving the most success.
Thank you.
Well, that sounds like me next. I'm Jack Adams. I've been with our company for 14 years, and that includes our very first venue. And so we were together, and we as a company were together 10 years before that as consultants and advisors and doers of great feasibility work and so on. But at some point, one of our clients slid the proposal we pushed back across the table and said, "Can you guys just do this for us?" And Jason, who you've met, said, "Sure, well, we can do that." We put our money where our mouth is, and went out and hired a general manager. You're looking at him, and did our first venue turnaround in Houston, Texas, and then in Fremont, California, and in Lake Barrington outside of Chicago, and outside of Philadelphia. And now we're at 100 venues a whole bunch of years later, and we've done everything you can think of in a sports venue, I hope. And so we have the tools. We're not working for a blank sheet of paper. We have thousands of employees now. So if we need an expert in something, we've likely to have them. If we need a relationship with somebody in the sports world, we're likely to have it. And my job, more than anything else at this point, and give me 6 months and they'll give me a different hat. So that's just sort of my life. But right now, my job is to take all of the resources that we have and make sure that you don't have to work very hard to find them, that I know what it is that you need, and I'm getting those folks applied to support the team that you hire. At its most basic, there is a team that you'll hire to operate your venue. We have venues with hundreds of employees. We have venues with 5. We will figure out the budget based on the direction and the needs, and then present that budget as a recommendation to you. And you'll say, "That's not aggressive enough. We need to do this, this, and this, and this, and this." And we'll come back and say, "Okay, here's the financial outcome and the organizational outcome of that." And you'll tell us if you like that or not. And we'll partner with you, and we'll continue to work on that until we fine tune something that we're aligned on. We don't say no to you. We work for you. You're our boss. What we say is, "Here's what will happen if you do that based on our experience. And do you like this outcome? Because that's the most likely thing. And if you don't like that outcome and you want this one, here's some suggestions." And then we leave the planning room with, "Okay, this is our direction. Let's go get them." So I think we're going to leave this planning room with a set of objectives that we're going to come and bring back to you in the form of recommendations, particularly a budget, but also some other things. So we're then going to, based on that budget, based on those objectives, hire a team. That team will be paid by the operating budget of the venue, and that there will not be a dollar that we mark up. In other words, we're not going to have a manager who makes $60,000, and so we charge you 65. Whatever the direct costs of that employment and of any costs to the venue are, those will go into the venue's profit and loss statement. And then of course we have our management fee and all the things, the details which I know Billy and you have gone into, and you've got some uniquenesses to the deal that we're working from, and don't worry, because there are 100 other unique deals. And every time we talk to a community, they always want to make sure we know how unique they are. And at this point, we know it, and we don't do the same thing twice. We have to solve new problems. And so that's the thing that you can count on us to be good at, is to solve problems and to come up with new ideas where they're needed, creative solutions where they're needed. And so I'll work with our team on doing that. I don't want to kind of go any further into it until we're talking about substance, but that's our, I would say the framework of how we hope to work with you is as your partner, as your employee, as it were, and according to the goals that you have and the needs and desires that you have, whatever. We say that your goal, our you steer, we'll push.
Thanks, Jack. And so we can kind of keep on track and kind of take these item by item, but Jack's intro there probably brought up a lot of ideas and questions. We'll get into those, and again, as you do that, please bring up anything that comes to mind that you want to have answers to. So the first item we had, and I know it's one that's probably the core of the relationship, is really the getting your vision on the scheduling of the facility, just so we're in lockstep there. Mr. Brown, I'm gonna paraphrase what I think our conversation has been. I like you just nod or correct me. My assumption, I think from what I've heard from you guys, that there's two relationships that are very important and stand above all others, and that's Kaiser Little League and Area Youth Baseball. I met with them after the meeting and did kind of a what do you like the best about the park? What would you like to see change about the park? If you were, had magic wand for the day, got a lot of good information. Talked to them independently about how they work or don't work together well. And I think we're blessed that the current administrations do work well together. I think one might tell you, well, they got some more slots than we did, and the other one will say, well, we'd like more slots than they did. So, certainly that's where we can come into play and be that third party and take your vision and then just implement it. But the good news is they work well together. Probably the bad news with organizations that are volunteer based, that's going to change. Their kids are going to age out. There's going to be a new president come in from Kaiser Little League. There's going to be a new McNary Youth Baseball. They might become the Hatfields McCoys and not get together as well. So there'll be an ongoing scenario, I'm sure. We've heard stories over the years, and there's been great relationships. There've been ones that haven't been so good. So hopefully that'll be what we'll keep on track. But my understanding is they have equal scheduling priority and first priority. So the first line item are those two groups together, 50-50. To the extent possible. Now it sounds like they have again great working relationship. One has a field slot open. They'll let the other know. Their two scheduling managers and our general manager will be on part of a group chat or some sort of a communication mechanism where they relinquish the field, they offer the other one to try to fill it, which sounds like it's often the case.
If I could. And I'm going to ask feedback at this point, because yes, there have been historical bumpy times, and I'm really excited that we have leadership that is really excited about making this very successful for the kiddos to play. So as part of how the scheduling is managed, will there be a written protocols on how to reserve fields, how to communicate when there's a rain out, how to communicate when there's going to be a cancellation for some reason, to get that information out to the the two organizations so they can rapidly respond? Is that gonna be part of the foundation on which we're gonna build this?
Yes, we'll write a policy that everyone will have a copy of. We talked about a 3 o'clock deadline every day. We're in Oregon, it rains, right? So it, from time to time. But, sounds like in the past, that was a moving target and it caused a lot of frustration. But if it's a drop dead at 3 o'clock, we're gonna make a decision, is it a go, is it, not go, rain out, that communication will happen at that time, so the organization can notify the families. So that's an easy one, just adhering to a policy, so.
There's a lot of technology that's making that easier and easier as we go. In the old days, you'd have to rely on trying to reach everybody by phone, and then even by cell phone. You had the wrong number for this person, and that one wasn't near they left their phone at home, and now it's as easy as a group text or a piece of software that can communicate.
We have some good registration portal softwares choices, and we'll select a good one, and as Jack mentioned, that has an easy instant text notification or email notification, so everybody's notified at that moment.
Awesome. Council President Starr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Higgins, I work with, kind of in the world where you have an entity and then you have lots of other entities around that must work together and work with that main entity. Do you, and in my past history in that kind of working in that framework, we've done memorandum of agreements or memorandum of understandings between all of the entities, and then kind of the central entity that does a lot of the coordinating. So the littler entities know what to expect from that central entity, and then the central entity, there's just agreement on expectations and practices and, who does what and when it's due, etc. Would you be implementing any kind of memorandum of agreement or understanding between you as the field manager and then the entities that might coordinate with you?
Yeah, they'll have a booking agreement that'll be required to provide their COI and that type of, then within that agreement, we can memorialize anything that's visionary, I think, at this point. So I think that would make sense
And
to
Mike,
do that.
you also have the user agreement.
Yep.
So they have a user agreement
Yep.
template that's separate.
Yep.
It's,
Similar.
it's exactly what you're talking about.
We call it a use license agreement so that we're not creating a tenancy, which gives somebody maybe more rights than intended. And that is a license to use the facility from, and then you write all the parameters on it. And we would invite you and your legal team, whoever you want, to review it and make sure that you're comfortable with all the language, so that the agreement we're making on your behalf is one that you support. But I would say of all the agreements and all the documents that we've produced over the years, that's the one we've had the least pushback on. It's really standard, and it just creates an agreement that you get to use this space for this time for these amount of dollars.
You have any nuance within there that you
Sure.
were used to
We also put a lot of parameters into what we thought was sort of the basic understanding in the contract itself in the exhibits. So that it kind of reads like policy and ground rules. And then, of course, we have our own park rule. And you guys can use all those. So for instance, we don't allow alcohol. So that's not even nuance, that's just straight up right now. But I mean, yeah, that's still under your guys' control.
Okay, any other questions on the facility scheduling of that part of the question? Councilor Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the things that, we used to do back in the olden days was we had a flag system also for people who, have a cell phone or they may not have this. And we just put a red flag up when you couldn't play and a green flag when you could.
Yeah, it sounds like they've used the virtual piece of that, but, call it red flag, green flag. We're happy to keep that going, and it makes good sense. That's great.
I'm gonna go to Councilor Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've heard quite a bit of talk about two different leagues, the MYB and KLL. There's also four other teams that are from Kaiser that ought to be able to use these fields too. How do we schedule them?
I was gonna, that's a great question for sure, and there'll be others, there'll be high school teams, there'll be others probably within the area, in the, urban growth boundary and others that will want to use the fields and again, paraphrasing, if I got this the right way, Kaiser Little League, McNair Youth Baseball, first priority 50-50. Then you really have, if you're layering a schedule, we're really dealing with weekends. Talk to OG Sports and tournament people for the weekends, but there'll be some other miscellaneous midweek slots that we could offer to other groups, and I think your question's great, and I think it's what's the vision for those slots, and typically what we see, direction is a local first. Then if not local outside the area, some of our facilities, we see teams traveling through and, I'm making this up, but it might be a team from Vancouver going to play a high school team in Eugene, and they want to stop and practice somewhere along the way, and they know that we have a nice field, and we can use it. Certainly not a local use, but one we would want to take advantage of if we had a slot open, right? So, throwing that out, and I know the Cal Ripken group has spoken, there's an interest there, and certainly, it makes sense, and fields are available to rent them out, so, but just go ahead, Mr. Brent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Just to let you know, the assumptions we talked about as a group working on this agreement, and then the agreement that was passed last week, it defines Kaiser Little League and McNair Youth Baseball as local teams, which local teams is defined as being based in Kaiser. But yeah, and then let me tell you a little bit the mechanics of how it's gone for those two leagues. They will basically block out the season which they start, I think, March 1st
A little
through
later, I think this year, but
Yeah.
yeah, ish, yeah.
and through May.
Yeah,
So
June
it's
20th,
2.5 months.
yeah.
Okay, so they'll kind of block that time period out amongst those two. And we are fortunate that we have two presidents there that have been working together for the last couple of years, which is, as I understand, has not always been the case. So that's a blessing. But they'll kind of block their schedules out, and then as they solidify when those games are going to be and those teams are going to practice, then they'll start releasing schedules back to the manager, which formerly was for love of the game. In this case, would be the sports facilities company, and then that creates openings for it. So something to consider here is whether you want to do something like we did for the artificial turf fields, where we have in their lingo, it's called the member fee because they're members of the nonprofit. But anybody else within the UGB has it's a little bit more, but a better rate, and maybe the rate doesn't change, but they get the priority after the local teams have made their bookings. Maybe Cal Ripken is the first right of refusal on the openings. But that is something for you, I think, a discussion point for you guys tonight. In the agreement, it's defined as those based in, and those leagues aren't. That league is not based in there. You have four teams, as we understand, that are all Kaiser kids. So how to deal with that? In this number one, the facility scheduling too, I wanted to say that the way it was in the last contract is the fees were set for the first, second, and third year. And they're at, the third year was at, $50 per game for Kaiser area teams. And then 75 for other users for the 60-foot fields. And then for the 90-foot field, it was 75 for Kaiser area teams, 125 for other users. And then in the fall, they would have to notify the council whether they wanted to change the fee. And for love of the game, notified and said, we don't want to change that. We don't anticipate, we don't want to change the field fee this year. That again was made into them, but we talked with Kaiser Little League and McNair Youth Baseball, and they didn't have a problem with the current fee schedule. That wasn't an issue for them. How it was booked, I think, was more of a topic, because instead of booking it for maybe 2 slots a night, they just said that field is 1 slot for the whole night. So there's potentially some ways you could work with that. Or we did talk with them a little bit about something that was in the past Kaiser Little League contract was a practice fee. So it was a little bit less. I remember talking with them about that practice fee, and they were kind of like, well, if we didn't do the practice fee and we just stayed to the 1 slot a night, then that'd probably be okay too. But if we went to a practice fee, maybe they do 2 slots for a practice. So there's some room for discussion there. You know, the decision points from you on how you want to treat that. Cal Upton teams that Council Kohler has been advocating for.
So I'm gonna bump it back up, about 10 or 20,000 feet, and then I'm gonna go to Councilman Starling and Councilor Duran. So looking at the policy regarding, you know, we have the 2 Kaiser base, then we have our region, and then outside of region is what we've been using as artificial at the turf fields, which is what I was hoping we would probably encourage you guys to look at as a model, because that encompasses the kids that play at McNary, at Blanchette, at other places. They're Kaiser kids, but they play for teams that we would consider to be in our area. So that's the only comment I want to make, and then I'm gonna go to Council President Stein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Mr. Brown was anticipating what my question was when I was asking about the definition that we're currently used on around local. I would ask that we make sure at some point in this conversation, if we can get the answer to why we were having our local kids playing or practicing on other like school fields or fields that were outside of our park system. Because I want to make sure that we get that issue addressed, and so they're not going, you know, having to rent from when we have a full Little League park here, that they're not being forced to go somewhere else. So I want to make sure, just get a pin in that.
I can take that one, I think, after talking to both organizations, so. You know, if this is the number of practice slots or time slots we have, this is their need. So they just, and so what they typically do is, we talked about a hierarchy of booking and what would be booked at the park kind of overall, and both kind of agree that games first, practices second. So if there's an actual playing contest, that would take priority or a practice. And then it would go by age group, so they would want to have the older kids get the opportunity, and then T-ball kids would be, and T-ball can be played at kind of open fields. It's pretty typical in a rec model. What we see, they kind of work their way up to the nicer complex as they get older. Yeah, they can play with a limited backstop and bases on grass and things like that.
They're playing at the park below my house, and it's my favorite thing to listen to outside.
Chicken soup for the
I love it.
softball soul.
Yes, yeah.
So I think they're good with that.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to talk it through, so just to hear from their mouths that there was a protocol, if you will, but that's why that's happening. They just need more fields. You know, and certainly from a funnel standpoint, we want more kids playing in baseball and softball, because that's good for the community, right? The other thing I will say is, just a culture of baseball and softball. You're gonna see a lot of different organizations shoot up over time too. You know, a certain dad might kind of launch a new, every dad might launch a new fast pitch organization or a baseball organization. And so at times, I think groups like that would kind of be in with the Cal Ripken mode are gonna be looking for slots. You just can't predict it, you know, certainly.
Counselor Duran.
Yeah, thanks. So I was thinking on the teams that aren't necessarily local, maybe at the beginning of the season, having them submit who they are and going by however many kids they have that live in Kaiser. And that kind of gives the range of who's the most qualified to take the next slots. You have 5 kids that live in Kaiser, then there are over the teams that have 2 kids. That was just a thought in my head. And then the other question I had was, Adam, you said that the slot, they were talking about slots for each day or each evening. How many games were you charging for in each slot? Was it's one slot for the evening and they're paying one fee, or is it?
Yeah, that's how it was running with under for love of the game.
But that doesn't seem right. I mean, if there's
Well,
slots a night for play, you should be charged for.
and there's not though. I mean, and typically we'll suggest a lot of times a 5 to 6:30 and a 6:30 to 8 type thing, but in Oregon, you know, that late slot, you wouldn't get a lot of daylight. It would be safe for kids to be throwing a ball at each other out there, that late slot. So what they have said is it's easier for them to self-manage. And then what they'll do is they'll put a team in the outfield where the other team is using the infield. They've got the field and they kind of self-manage it. So that's kind of just cut and dry as maybe we'd like it to be, but I think it works. So
And then I'm not a baseball softball guy. I'm learning a lot more though. I believe is the softball, is it timed to versus the baseball?
no, same, just shorter, a little bit shorter game, you know, overall, but yeah. The other thing I was gonna mention too is just you talked about the rate structure and we got that on the agenda, but from our standpoint, really congruent with what we see out there, and I think the rates are really competitive and good. Certainly wouldn't suggest any increase if you asked us, I guess at this point. The thing I would say is what we typically protocol would do is set up some sort of meeting at the end of the season. I'd say like late August to kind of review this, and that would take place every year. Just how to go. Are there any changes to this type of policy? Was everybody playing by the rules? Do we want to increase prices this year? Is there a need to increase prices this year? So again, Jack talked about the partnership. That's the partnership is you guys continue. So this is your last chance to talk tonight. It's an open door. We always want to be reviewing how it's working, but what do you want to do?
We need additional, I've got one more. And that was, want to make sure that we are paying very close attention to baseball and softball. Softball is huge in this community, as you probably heard in the initial conversations. I mean, we have a young Olympian among us. And I think that's important to recognize that softball is a very large piece of our youth sports in this community.
Yeah, 4 daughters.
Okay,
They all play softball.
I'm preaching to the choir.
Yes, preaching to choir.
The
burning
question?
We'll have to get microphone because we are recording. Is that okay?
You're the mayor.
Todd Wally in Salem. Just a quick question. So if a third party, say softball team come in that was local based, Kaiser, not a team, a league. We have 2 baseball, would that equal percentage split between say 33, 33, 33 then? Of equal use?
That would have to be something that would have to be brought to the management team, and then if it needed to come to council for, I don't think it would, I think that would be under the contractual management. So to have that conversation about what that would look like, and also the need for the field, also looking at, again, we have the priorities that we have with our two organizations, so looking at capacity and the relevance and also the need there. So I think that that's something that we can't decide tonight.
I think
Always
that's
open.
what Grant's point is great, because that's what you'll see with these organizations. Like I said, you'll see a softball group pop up, but oftentimes it's either coming out of the rec system and trying to be more competitive. So there might be 4 kids from Kaiser, and it might be 6 from Roseburg, and so it really does come down to a percentage, I think, and then you can compare that group to the Cal Ripken group, how many locals do they have, and that can be just a question on the application to rent the field. We'll learn a little bit more about your organization and see who's got the priority. That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So, that was a concern of Kaiser Little League and Weekend Youth Baseball. And so the contract as it's written, it says for the purpose of this contract, Weekend Youth Baseball and Kaiser Little League are local teams. And if there's somebody else to be considered local, then we have to amend the contract with you, the city council, to add them as a local team. But on that decision point with Councilor Kohler's question out there, I don't want to leave him hanging, but maybe I'd suggest that rather than a price structure change for that UGB, people in the UGB, maybe it is a priority benefit there that once Kaiser League and McNary Baseball release time slots that those Kaiser-based teams get the first shot at those openings, and they're just throwing that out there as a potential compromise.
We'll have some knowledge of some open slots too that they won't use, because in March prior to their season, there'll be probably 2 to 3 weeks where there's open slots, and we can offer those to a group like that are in that next pool of people. So
the other thing I will make sure everybody understands, because like I said, I'm learning lots the last 6 months. Kaiser Little League cannot take anybody outside of Kaiser, the city boundaries of Kaiser. When they established the Little League for city, they're bound to those city limits. And so that's the disadvantage of them. They can't go up to North Salem and say, hey, come play for us. Whereas Cal Ripken League can come, and they are a tournament team. They can come and say, hey, come play for us and do a little more. So that's at a disadvantage. I don't think Premier Youth Baseball, and some, if you know different, I don't think Premier Youth Baseball is bound to that, but Kaiser Little League is.
Little League's national charter is it's got a geographic lock. So they part of when you get your charter, you can't take anybody from that did adhere to the age limits, and they have to adhere to the geographic of that area. So truly a community-based model.
I'm gonna check in with Councilor Kohler. You had your hand up. Did your question get answered?
Oh, of course. I do have some additional questions and maybe some additional insight. We have 7 fenced fields there, and we have 4 others that are unfenced that work very good for practice fields and for t-ball and some of the lower level games and even practices in 1 90-foot field. So if we had, there's 7. If you had an early practice and a game, there's 14 plus the other 12. That's an awful lot of teams that can be using that facility. My big concern is I want all of our Kaiser kids to be able to use the fields, not just the ones that are in MYLB or MYB and Little League, but all of our Kaiser kids to be able to use it. So if there is a league that has out of the 15 kids on the team, 12 of them are from Kaiser. I think they ought to be able to use that field.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly be our philosophy to maximize use, so, every prevailing night, we like full capacity of the field, so.
Counselor Ross.
Thank you again for being here. That was late one last week. Hope you caught up on your sleep. My question is, do you plan on for the teams that maybe don't have, you know, the parents with big deeper pockets and implementing some kind of trade out with volunteer hours? So maybe they can help with some of the maintenance on the field with some hours, volunteer hours.
Yes, yeah, I think we've discussed that, and I think that's been done in the past, I think, there's a couple things there, each of the organizations do have a scholarship program too, to some extent, they have a certain number of scholarships available. And the funds that were left in the further low of the game, enterprise fund, I guess you will. I know, Mickey has mentioned that they're gonna allocate that for scholarships. So there'll be an extra little pool of scholarship money this year because of that money that's left over.
Okay, great, and I will leave it to you as an expert and for Mr. Brown to coordinate that, but I think that shows a lot to the young kids in our community and gives them a sense of pride and purpose when we're able to implement that.
That's great. I think the one thing we can do better is communication, website. Let those kind of programs be known. Do a better job.
I'm gonna go Counselor Parkinson from the.
I just want to know about how's it gonna be like the oversight of the fields? Will there always be somebody there?
Yes. Anytime it's open to the public, we're gonna we'll have a staff member there.
Okay.
Manager on duty.
Okay.
Council President Starr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is I think the self-education question and clarification question for myself. I've heard a couple of references to local teams and then or local teams / leagues and then tournament leagues. Is Cal Ripken considered a tournament?
I think under the. Mr. Brand, you want to take this one or you?
It's my understanding that they are.
Okay, thank you. And then is Kaiser Little League considered a tournament league, or I'm seeing no. And neither is McNary baseball, correct?
Yeah, those would be rack or local and
We
again.
literally have local
Yes.
Kaiser Little League and McNary Youth Baseball, right, as local. And then when we talk about Cal Ripken, they're defined as a tournament league.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
So, we kind of started morphing a bit. Are we ready to move from the facility scheduling to talking about the, enterprise fund?
I think one more issue there, Mayor, is the tournaments.
Oh, yes, sorry. I jumped.
Piece, and we've got Todd here, and
Okay.
thank you for being here, Todd. I've discussed with Todd, I think he's got submitted 28 dates. Is that right, 28? What's that?
Yes.
20. Yep, more than 28. And again, we would be ready to move forward on a use license agreement, which need kind of memorialize the terms. And as we go forward, Jack talked in his intro about every decision you make, has a cause and effect, really. When we make a decision about fees, here's the enterprise fund, if we're lowering fees, the enterprise fund shrinks, we gotta. So certainly when we set prevailing rates, we are setting some sort of a standard, and there's a cause and effect there. In review of the rates for tournaments, from what we see at other locations, typically there's kind of two ways of charging either a game fee or a per field per day for a tournament. So a per field per day, or anywhere from maybe 250 to 650. 650 is a Panama City Beach prime facility turf, just in a different facility. But certainly at $250 for a facility like the one we have here is a fair fee. So if you said a game fee's $40 a game, and there's 6 games a day, that's $240. So very, very much in line. That's what you're at now. 40%. Yeah, so he's in line there. I think the one thing that is not in line is there's a cap of $1,000 a day, right? So if you ran that out, it would be about $2,000 a day. With the number, how many fields do you typically 8?
I can't use,
Sorry.
You don't have to be an owl with your head swiveling.
Let's say it's 8.
Yeah,
For mass, and that's
Yeah.
$2,000.
5 slots a day, 40 teams on 8 fields.
Okay. So if it capped at 1,000, it's basically half of what we would suggest. So it comes down to you setting. Do we now? Todd's really workable. This is also short notice. He's had year rates out there for a while, and changes are tough on teams. We don't want teams to drop out. So those are all considerations I think we gotta look at. I think there's also, we had added gate fees. Introduced the idea of gate fees in the pro forma. I know that was talked about a little bit, and that's a strategic decision you make. So we moved to gate fees and keep the $1,000 cap, or we get rid of the $1,000 cap. So, how do you react?
I
You like
would,
prices to go down now, right?
I would need to sit down and run some budgets, to be honest. Just look on, based on 8 teams, and it is a challenge with 8 full fields with the parking scenario there, and allowing where to warm up teams, so just kind of need to sit down and run through the budgets.
Yeah. I don't speak for the mayor and council. I think we look at this as a long-term relationship, and this is, you see kind of where we're going for the future, so we want to get there, but how do we bridge that? So leave your hands, Mayor.
Well, and this is kind of for Todd too. Is this NAPA or USA?
Neither.
It's neither?
I don't do a sanctioning body, so I can control the rule, I don't have to report to them.
So what's the average price each team's gonna pay to play in this tournament?
$750. So I'm 10-year-olds, 9 and 10-year-olds are $650, 11 and 12s are $750, 13 and 14s are $850.
Thank you.
So prevailing rate anymore.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, like, why would we put a cap then on $1,000 per day? We're gonna do 240, right, per field and keep it at that. Why would we have to do it now? I guess that's what I don't understand.
I'm gonna go to Mr. Brown, then hand up, and then Councilor Kohler, I saw you had a question.
Just for the purpose of this pro forma, there was no cap in our contract with for a lot of the game. So it was kind of being run counter to what the contract should have intended. It intended for our local teams to play at an affordable rate, and then to make money on tournament use through out of towners. Instead, it was really being run the opposite, where you're charging the local kids prime rate and then giving discounts for the out of towners. I wish I had an audit to figure that out, but I learned that through Todd and all my conversations over the last 6 months. So our assumption was, yeah, don't change the rate on the current local teams, but at the very minimum, the tournament team should be according to the rate set in the schedule.
That's pretty consistent with what we see. I can throw it to Jack, and he's had a lot of experience with this as well. There's a lot of ways to bridge this, and we can You know, one example might be, hey, if you have, full complement of teams and we're making exit the concession stand, that, so the pool of what we're looking at is, if it's there, then that's really kind of the end goal, right? So, Jack, anything you want to add there on that?
Sure. There are three things that these parks usually that a city wants them to do. One is that they want them to serve the community at the lowest possible price so that kids are not looking at their screens, but they're touching grass, they're playing sports, they're building character, all the good things that you get out of a place like this and why we're all talking about in the first place. That's the first thing that cities want. We want that too. That's our mission statement. The second thing is somebody's got to pay for that. So cities want that to be to have as much revenue as possible in order to defray cost. And then the third thing that they often want is economic impact. They want people to come in from out of town and drop their dollars off and then go home, and that benefits the community in a different way. For a lot of reasons. So sometimes those things, those three goals can be opposed, right? For example, driving more revenue is opposed to giving it at a lower price to the community. So we don't make recommendations about which thing you should want. It's your vision. We want to know which you want, and then we can help you drive that way. And there are lots of ways to get to and achieve any one of those goals or a good balance of those goals and so on. The example that Mike is using is when you have a group that says to you, and you say the rent is, I'm just making numbers up when I say this, please don't anybody latch on to them. The rent is $2,000. And the person says, yeah, but my teams are going to bring you, 10 grand a weekend on the concession stand. And then we might say, well, you know what, let's put a minimum in there that says that if we're going to do 10 grand, then your rent is 1,000. But anything less than that, and you're going to make up the difference, towards the $2,000 top line rent. So that's just an example of the kind of negotiation we might do. We want to do that under your authority and according to a set of parameters that's always fair and equal. So we're not recommending that at this moment. What I guess I'm trying to do is give you an example of the kind of thing that when we do our work session and present a budget or a couple options for a budget, there will be these parameters in there. We'll share those with you. You'll say we like how you're coming to those decisions or not. We'll make adjustments until we get to a place where you like how we're making those decisions, again, to accomplish those three goals in the priority that you want them. And that's where we say that you're going to have a lot of control. We're going to make those recommendations. You're going to make the decisions. The other thing I think I would just share is that it is really normal. It is a normal end game solution for the local recreational teams to have the weekdays, Monday through Thursday or part of Friday, and it's normal for the tournaments and outside events that are coming in and driving tourism, or the teams are coming back and forth to have weekends. So that's just a normal thing. It is also normal to use pricing to extend the day. So, for example, you might have some peak hours. Call that 6 to 9. I'm making this. That only counts for lit fields, by the way. But so let's say your peak hours are 6 to 9. That's when everybody wants to play and practice during the week. Well, you can rent the fields for one price there where it's at full rate, but then you can drop the price going from 9 to 11. Just for example, again. So you might find that some organizations want to come use that off time, and that pushes them off peak. And so you can use money to do that. You can also use some of the priorities that you were discussing, X amount of or high percentage of local kids. Whatever you want to set that priority as, that's how you can divvy out peak and off peak times. But of course, the more times you look at, the more opportunity there is. You don't just have to give away the whole day to somebody. For example, you can make sure that you're really maximizing so that all the fields are busy all the time once we've gotten really good at playing Tetris with the calendar and filling it all in. And that's another question for future investment too. For example, if there's more lighting needed or anything along that line that creates capacity, you may decide, you know what, this is a real force for good in our community. We want it, and then where would you invest X amount of dollars if you had it? And we'd tell you, here's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, according to the type of priority you set.
Mayor.
I want to go to Councilor Kohler if I may really quick, because he's been waiting. And now I'll go back to you, Mr. Rob. Councilor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We're not getting very far into our list very quickly, but I heard somebody mention earlier that they thought that Cal Ripken was a tournament team, and it's a community recreational league. They do travel. There's a difference between a traveling team and a tournament team. They'll travel to Silverton or Salem or maybe even as far as Albany. But I know when my grandson was playing MYB a couple of years ago, they were traveling those same places. So I don't know that you want to be calling those guys a tournament team.
Better preferred as a sanction. It's like JVO, but you can choose to play Little League, JVO or Cal Ripken, and yeah, it's a sanction for sure. Yeah, that's the fair way of saying it for sure.
If I could jump in too, I think there's two ways to look at the localized protections, right? One is strictly from a resident standpoint of making sure that Kaiser kids have first access, but also you could look at it from a protection standpoint that the parameters that have been put in place have protections for Kaiser Little League and McNary. So, and when I say that, we've seen this in other scenarios. How much opportunity do you want to give a Salem organization, or an organization that is from Salem, the opportunity to come set up shop and then recruit local players because they know local players are going to get that access first, and then you have a neighboring city organization that isn't necessarily based in Kaiser, but now they are because they know that they can recruit those players and have first access. Sorry, just wanted to jump in on that.
Thank you. This is going to be a nuanced conversation regarding additional organizations such as Cal Ripken and other organizations that we'll be dealing with. So I'd like to put a pin in that one for right now, because that's going to be something that as we go through this first season, there are going to be learning opportunities. And we'll be looking to SFC to bring us recommendations on how we can continue to improve our operations in year 2. So unless I've got objection, I think we need to continue down our list and make sure that we cover some of the other key components of tonight's conversation before we're here really late. But I think this has been a very constructive conversation and really brings out the variety of interest in this facility and the opportunities that we have, especially as the availability of all the fields continues to improve. So, Ms. Brown, did you have a final thought before we go on to the enterprise fund?
I just wanted to, I didn't point out that the assumption for the pro forma was that no gate fees for Monday through Friday to the local teams, but gate fees for the tournaments. And then that, yeah.
I don't think there's any objection to that distinction. I'm not seeing any. And that, again, the tournament professionals, you're the guys who do this sort of stuff. This soccer mom's learning a lot too. I have no kids that play baseball, softball. All my kids are athletes in other sports, so I'm learning. But again, I'm going to be looking to the professional managers to come back to us with this was what working. This is where we can make some improvements and continue to evolve. We're doing the same thing at community fields, you know, at our turf field. So if nothing else, I hope the takeaway is that we are open to learning and evolving. Anybody disagree with that? Okay.
Fair, if I could offer, if this is consistent with what your wishes are, because we leave the open issue there, we do have to settle what the relationship with Todd is, and if you guys are okay with me sitting down with Todd and coming back with a suggestion following this based on hearing what the discussion tonight. Sounds like we want to move to a situation where we've got better finances. So Todd's gonna need some time and to get the word out for teams in the future, and so it's a situation we'll have to work. That fair to you? Yeah. You guys, yeah. You Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Council President, sorry, you have a question?
Mr. Higgins, so what was the pricing or the understanding that you used to create this budget related to tournaments and?
So we did not, so we used a prevailing rate. Kind of company wide, what we've seen, so we'll have to, you know, if we're not able to make. If the cap prevails, then we'll have to make adjustments. So it won't be as much revenue there, so we'll have to. To answer that question.
I'm not hearing a lot of interest in retaining the cap. So, as you're making recommendations, for the final budget, it sounds like the cap is a negotiable item. Is that a fair way to put it? Okay, I'm not getting anybody saying, no, that's a terrible idea.
I don't want to open a can of worms here either, but one last issue before we go to the enterprise fund, the president of the Kaiser Little League had brought up for consideration to. She asked if the council ever had a vision on changing the name of the park. And her comment was, oftentimes, since they're Kaiser Little League and the park's been Kaiser Little League Park, they call her versus the administration for the park. And is it a advantageous marketing reason for us to come up, rebrand the park?
So yes, that's a huge can of worms, and that's
Yes.
another whole work session, so let's put a pin in that one, because we'll need to discuss the pros and cons, and there's a huge legacy. That goes with it, so I think it's gonna be a far more complex conversation for our community to have before we recommend change of the name of the park. I understand how that happens with the communications that people call her, because that's the first thing that pops up. Hopefully with social media and algorithms, that can change. When people Google that park, your name will pop up instead. That's gonna take a little time for the search engines to catch up. So I appreciate that question.
I think part of that goes to the potential for sponsorships or to be earned for a complex sponsor. So,
That makes an easy change if we can sell it, naming rights.
We will have the conversation about finding a way to do that on legacy and allows for sponsorship. So that's gonna be a more nuanced conversation that I don't think we can handle tonight.
yeah, but in which, if we did go down that route, that would all come back to you. Where we wouldn't, want to sell any naming rights without the council's permission.
I'll just back you.
Okay. Try to
All right,
move it a little faster pace here, but moving on to the enterprise fund, I thought I'd throw to Jack for just a quick explanation of this. I know a lot of discussion at the last meeting about it, but certainly it really comes down to just cash flow, seed money to start the fund. And but Jack, you want to take that and
I think probably Billy's a little closer to it than me, but I'll just explain that there's an amount of dollars that we've identified for things that that need to be repaired in order to get them to accomplish the dollars that we're suggesting should be brought in. In other words, if you don't have a soda machine, you can't sell soda and so on. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to do is separate the two funds or the two amounts. We really talk about around $100,000 for cash flow and then an amount for capital purchases.
Yep.
I just want to talk about the concept and let's come back and I want to go through that list with you guys real quick and just show you kind of what we need to build out. So Bill, you want to take that on the cash flow piece?
Yeah, absolutely. And in regards to the number that we recommended, we looked at a starting point in when we felt comfortable that enough revenue was going to start coming in to support the operation via field rental fees, tournament rental fees, And then obviously, when we do kick off tournaments, which I believe is the first weekend of March, that's going to give us the opportunity to start really making an impact there with food and beverage sales, gate fees, that good stuff. So, within that $100,000 fund, we'd be looking at utilizing that money to hire staff, to start purchasing equipment and things needed for the park. So whether that's bases for the fields that need upgraded, some of the drying sand for the fields for wet weather, things like that, office supplies, and then capital funds separate for the food and beverage operation, to get us to a point of be able to have a little bit more robust offering, and realistically, that's where we're going to make the biggest difference here, is in the per caps that we're able to capture from people coming in the park through tournaments and league nights, and be able to get more people served, not having those long lines, being able to have the equipment where we can create more turn through in the food and beverage. So whether it's drinks and sodas or popcorn or hot dogs, and being able to work with you guys too, to make sure that we have the right pricing on those things and we have the right offerings to serve the community.
Thanks, Billy. Is it any conceptual about the $100,000 startup, and if not, move on to the equipment?
Good, move on. I'm getting head nods.
Okay. So you have in front of you the proposed shopping list slash capital budget here. This adjusted a little bit, and if I could say, I think it'll only go down from here. So as we learn more, I've been through the facility now, we won't need a 3-compartment sink, so that'll come out of there. Just items like that. I'm not gonna read every item, but suffice to say that the equipment on the top is the equipment needed to be able to manage a normal menu that would drive the type of revenue that we projected for the facility. So that's hamburgers, hot dogs, nachos, hot pretzels, candy, chips, popcorn, kind of things like that. There's no fryer out there, so we won't, there's a cost data event to be able to do French fries and that type of thing to be looked at in the future. But that's a pretty normal menu and robust, much more robust than they've had in the past. But the equipment to run that type of menu is not there. So.
Okay, no, questions started.
Any questions on any of that?
Thank you. Mr. Higgins, I noticed you have Clover terminals and Clover Flex.
Yes.
That I assume is a point of sale system.
Yeah, it is. And so yes, we use Clover pretty much exclusively. I mean, that's been our POS system of choice. The management information that you can derive from that is fantastic. It helps ordering prep.
Is there a certain specification of the terminal that you need to use with that software, or is it when you say Clover terminal?
Yeah, so terminals, if you guys have been in businesses where they flip the screen over,
So it's just an iPad.
It's like an iPad, but it's a software system that, like a GM would have on their phone. I can look and go, oh, we're at $8,000 today, in sales. The Flexes are little mini terminals. You've also seen those that take up your table. Typically we use those at times for ticket sales, potentially if it was a ticketed event that we were selling tickets. So it gives the flexibility. We need a safe out there. I've got a little bit of money listed in here for electrical and plumbing. I think plumbing we're gonna be okay. Electrical, we might need some more service to be able to run some of the equipment that we add there. Sure, there's 220 power, that kind of thing. So, and then office equipment, really minimal, just some desks, a couple computers, just to get us kind of up and rolling. And then we're really sourcing mostly used and surplus equipment here. Kaiser Little League's president also has some, I think her family is in the restaurant business and she has some surplus equipment that she wants to donate. She told me, so that could also lower these numbers. So we're gonna work hard to deliver this at the lowest possible number that we can, and then certainly, once we do that, we don't need the money that we don't spend, so.
That's good. That's very generous, yeah. Mr. Brown?
And so just to assure you too, that the number we presented to you last week, we had this information, that budget covers this and the amount that needed for the management fees.
So all inclusive,
All of them.
okay. Yes, yes indeed, and numbers are going down.
Okay,
Any other
Excellent.
questions? Nope, all right.
all right, keep rolling here. Financial control, so, I just wanna talk about this real quick, and, I think we covered it, Billy and I last time, but ultimately, we're working on your behalf. The biggest thing is the development of the annual budget. So based on the assumptions today, we're gonna work on refining the pro forma, but we would immediately move into developing a budget that you would approve. I think our target would be somewhere in 45 days. Realistically, to get that to you. I think in the short term, we'll work under the pro forma and do what we would need to do under good faith and trust, but all the while working hard to get a final budget back to you to be able to approve, and then we have
Mike, can I add to that one clarifying statement? So the pro forma is a study that we do. I think one of the questions earlier is where do you get that price from? The pro forma is a study that we do that says in all markets like yours, of your size and your region and so on, what is the prevailing price for this exact product, and how many what's the sports participation rate for that particular sport at that particular age, and so on. So it's a study, and then at that drive time. So it's a series of filters that says if this amount of humans in your area, these are the ones that are likely to pay this price to play this sport to drive this amount of space. So you get the idea that, and you come up with this is the market opportunity. If you had several baseball parks near you, we would also divide by how many parks you had and look at their competitive advantages. And so it's a comprehensive study, but it's just that it's a market opportunity. The budget is when we take that and say, we now intend to work with these 5 organizations this way at this price, scheduled in this way over these months. And this is what we think the revenue and costs are going to be each of those months. So the budget is a lot more tactical and a lot more specific, whereas the pro forma is more of a study of the market opportunity, at which point you still have a bunch of decisions to make about priorities and things like we were discussing earlier. So the budget is based on that work, what we're going to come back and say, this is what direction we'd recommend you go based on what we heard, and then you react to that, and then we tweak it based on that. Does that make sense in terms of difference between pro forma and budget?
Real quick too, Jack talked about our, where we cut our teeth as a company as an advisory firm, and that's something we still do. That's a large amount of our business. So we work with our advisory team who pulls these numbers from budgets and databases around the country, give us per cap numbers and participation numbers, and really great numbers to be able to build those performance and get them pretty close.
I've got a question actually, it's for Mr. Brown, Mr. Wood. The development of this budget and the enterprise fund, will that be part of or have to be done later as part of our budget process for this year?
Mr. Wood has informed me, would we have to adopt a budget for the current fiscal year? And then we would need one for the second fiscal year.
Okay,
So June, or July 1 to June 30, 27.
okay, so we'll do a supplemental budget between now and July 1 to take care of this part, and then the going forward. Okay. Perfect. And I have a second question after that, what it was. It's okay, that was the main question. On the budgeting. It'll come back, I'll have to circle my train around. Any other questions on, budgeting? Okay, go on.
Yeah, and then, okay, reporting, I think we'll throw to Josh and talk about this, and again, talk about, Josh being the vice president of the West Coast and the GM of Firelines are, under his direction. But he can talk a little about some of the reports that we would develop on a normal cadence. And, certainly if that works for you guys, then, we'll get off and running on that type of thing. Certainly if there's a different cadence that you need, then we do that. But Josh, you want to take that one?
Sure. Thanks, Mike, and nice to meet everyone tonight. It's been mentioned a few times, but I want to reiterate as part of this reporting discussion, the most important thing for us is that this is a partnership and that you all are happy and have the information that you want and have a complete story of what's happening at the facility at all times. So the last bullet point here is on demand, and so that's always an option, but I'll sort of walk through what we do on a monthly, weekly, and annual basis for you. And, Jack and Mike may jump in here too, but on a monthly basis, we will report on a financials, and that will be a full financial packet with GAAP standard accounting, fully auditable accounting that includes the profit and loss statement for the month, profit and loss statement for the year, a balance sheet. It will have the bank reconciliation so you can see every transaction coming in and out of the bank in detail. So there's really all the information, and you can see what's happening in as much detail or in a summarized form that you want to see in that document. Along with that, to help summarize that, we do what we call a variance report, where that is us providing a narrative for you all showing the month to budget and breaking it down by different categories and how the financial performance was. And if there was a variance, hopefully it's in the positive, but either way, we're providing a narrative saying where we overachieve or where we may have underachieved and what's going on that month that contributed to those numbers. So you're not just looking at a number in a spreadsheet and saying, okay, what does that mean? Why was this high? Why was this low? What's going on? Why are these guys geniuses and they budgeted perfectly? And that's what we hope to do every month. But, along with that, you'll be getting reports on a weekly basis too. And these weekly reports aren't exactly financial reports. We don't like to dive into the financials necessarily on a weekly basis, but what we're talking about goes more towards this narrative that I'm talking about and goes more into participant numbers and gives you information on what's happening in the past week, what events took place, what organizations were out there, how many participants did we see, what sort of numbers were we doing at the concession stands? We may talk about what are the best selling items at the concession stands. I always encourage my general managers to include a star story of the week. Maybe it's something great that an employee did. We had great customer service. Maybe we talk about, little Johnny hit his first home run ever. Just throw in something fun and something exciting. Always nice to have good news in those. But again, that goes back to just trying to provide narrative and insight into what's going on, and that can be tailored. We have a standard one that we do, but that can always be tailored. If you say, hey, Josh and team, we don't like, seeing this, that's not really helpful for us, but I need more information on, what are we doing in gate fees? That was a hot topic. Constituents have been talking to us about that. What is that looking like? We can start reporting that on a weekly basis too. And then annual reports. So again, that goes back a little bit more to the finances, but we talk about a business plan and the annual budget that we put together. When we put that budget together, that's our plan for the year. And we, again, like to put a business plan. How are we going to achieve these numbers? And describe to you all so that you're not just looking at a spreadsheet and a budget and these numbers don't have any narrative to them. what's the plan, what are the action steps, and what are the goals that are being laid out, and how do we achieve them? So those are kind of the reports, but again, I'll quickly reiterate and then let Jack or Mike or Billy jump in here too, or if you all have any questions, but all of these can be tweaked. We have our standard reports and we do them, but they're all slightly different, right? That you all may have certain things that you want to see more. You may say, I don't need to see this, keep it in there, but put it towards the end. You know, it can all be tweaked, and timing can be tweaked as well. So we're open to feedback. We want feedback. We want this to be a good partnership. And again, we want you all to have all the information that you need at your fingertips and when you need it. So.
Thank
nothing,
you.
nothing to add to the total reports, but I just want to in the business plan, part of that will also be a capital recommendation. So based on here's some capital that we recommend you spend for life safety. This one's for return on investment. You know, we think you'll have more revenue to the park if you do these things. This one is just, you know, community satisfaction stuff, aesthetics, and so on. So we'll prioritize those and then make recommendations as part of a yearly exercise as well. And that'll give you something to work from, you know, to make decisions from.
You read my mind for the next question.
Woohoo!
Ms. Brown.
Yeah, just to assure you, Madam Mayor and Council, we did get those reporting dates into the final contract that was requested by Council. Mr. Winston.
We're used to, you know, at the end of the year, coming back, council and doing kind of the big report, but again, whatever cadence, as Josh mentioned, that you guys want. So I guess what I recommend is, can we do what we normally do? And as you're getting those reports, as he said, a little bit more of this, a little less of this, what we like. So that'd be an open situation. Typically, it'd be routed through the city managers.
Well, I think two things. One is the ongoing reporting piece that will help us understand how the flow of the money is within the enterprise account, but also when you talked about the capital improvements, what are we able to pull from this that could go back into the facility and continue to upgrade it for performance, for quality, for our kids' experiences, and also for the safety and so forth. So those recommendations showing that the field is helping support itself for the future is only going to be a good thing from my point of view. The other piece is, we talked a little bit about Travel Salem last time, we're looking at Councilor Cross. The kind of data that will help us understand the larger economic story, and maybe that's in the annual report that we would get, but I think we will be interested in seeing if there's anything in the preliminary that will help us understand how this change in season one, if there's any stories to tell. I think it would be good to tell the story if we can. I know it takes time.
I think that, well, Adam can reach out to Joey or Angie, but they can track to see when they're good return at county. Yes, they're coming from out of town and how long they're staying here and whatnot. So they have the capability of doing that. So if
we have an economic impact report that we talked about it the last time. It's the sports ETA calculator. But if you're okay with that, I mean, we can make that part of our reporting cadence. Typically, when we do a tournament, we work with the rights holder,
and
submit that, and we can see what kind of economic impact is derived from that event.
And if we could get a work session again, reach out to Angie and Joey on a possible SGPA, that would be another one.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
I'm gonna come back to that on number 8, because
Okay.
that's huge. That's,
Okay.
we're gonna talk about stuff you guys wanna do at the park.
Yeah.
Then when we get to 8, it's like, how are we gonna pay for that stuff?
Okay.
So, if we're okay moving on.
Yes, any further on the
I just had one other thing to note. Sorry to jump in. I think it's important to kind of paint the picture of the work that our staff on the ground will do with within the local businesses, including the hotels, and keeping them up to date on events that are coming into town, and discussing, hey, this is how many hotel room nights we're expecting for this particular event, or letting Chick-fil-A know when the busy times are going to be, so that some of those businesses can plan around and staff up as well as needed. I think that level of detail that we put into it is important for the experience, for those families to keep coming back. So I just wanted to make note of that as well.
That's really a big part of the communication of the community about how important an economic driver the park can be. And so I want to have just kind of a visionary discussion about what you guys feel the park's presentation should be in a realistic version today, knowing what you've known and knowing kind of where we're at, and then where can we help you get to?
So actually, I'm going to put Mr. Lawyer on the spot, who is probably one of the people who knows that park better than just about anybody in the room. And we've talked about a number of projects that are in our current master plan. Can you remind us what those are, and in your experience with that park, where those first opportunities are?
Well, we have an updated 3 to 5 year priority plan for the parks that we presented at the long range planning task force meeting. I honestly don't remember all those projects off the top of my head. That is park system wide, that is not in any one park. As far as the Little League complex goes, probably the first significant thing that needs to be addressed is drainage. We've heard that over and over and over. And after that, it just becomes us prioritize improvements and upgrades, I will say, that increase the opportunity for playable hours. Because the more hours you got to play, the more revenue you make. They have to be, if you're going to be, just the more opportunities to use the facility is a bonus. Maybe looking at the lower fields, I understand there's been some improvements made to the lower fields in the last couple of years. I haven't been out there to those fields for a bit, so I really don't know their status. But that would be, to me, an ideal place to start looking at, I'm going to say, improvements. Those fields have probably been less improved over the years than the quad fields and the rest of the fields. And then the other thing, looking at the big field, how that could be diversified. The smaller games, not just the rental basis.
So I want to follow up on one thing brought up, not drainage. Do we have a plan from our environmental division on what it will take to deal with the drainage in that park?
No, we do not. That would be more in storm drainage department, not the environmental technical division.
Okay.
We know where facilities are. We TV those facilities. We know where there's some of the problems. I think the biggest problem is just getting the water into the system to get it out.
And so I'm gonna follow up one more. How do we get that plan into an action plan so that as we're making decisions for investments, we know what the order of operation is to help make that happen?
Work with the management organization of the facility, have them work with us as opposed to being out there on their own, doing things, not to badmouth anybody, not to say anything negative, but do things with our knowledge and expertise involved, and not just do things as you see fit. For example, there were some drainage improvements made last spring, early on, about this time of year last year. And they used the drainage fabric to put drain rock in, keep the dirt out. Well, the fabric they used was the wrong fabric. It did not let water pass through it as fast as it could have been. So not a big thing, honestly, but something that could have been better with the city. We could have made a recommendation and it would have worked better in the best, for instance.
What Mr. Lawyer is saying is what we're used to doing. I mean, we're used to working with the city versus, it's your asset, right? So first thing is to communicate what the plan of attack is and how to take that on.
So from my point of view, I'll go to you, Councilor Christopher. The drainage has been an issue for ever. when my son played soccer out there way back in the dark ages, they put them on lower fields and there was Fukushi. So this has been an ongoing issue. So what I wanted to do is make sure that everybody knows we have the stormwater division, I have the correct one, that is an expert in this field and can be a huge asset in making sure that whatever gets planned for that field solves the problem once and for all. And we haven't had the data, we haven't had the plan, we haven't had a facility plan for that park until now. Is that a fair statement?
We still have not created a formal facilities plan. That was in this year's budget to be done, and that money has been re-identified for the operations and facilities plan. So we'll work with Mike and his group over the next months, I will say, to generate the facilities plan in a cooperative effort. Okay. And I say all this, even though I'm not gonna be here, but I'm confident we'll do it. Okay?
You know where they live.
Yes, I do. And they know where I live too.
They're gonna find you wherever you're at.
That's right.
That makes me a warm place.
Me and you. But regardless of that, we will work together, city, public works staff, work together with them to create that plan.
Thank you. So from my point of view, and I'll throw it to Councilor Christopher, that's top priority, is the facilities plan for what this park needs. Nuts and bolts, before we start talking, you know, more ooh shiny. And even the ooh shiny, it'll be helpful for the ability to use that park more. But we have some foundational issues that need to be addressed and have not historically. So that's my 1.5 cents worth. Councilor Christopher.
Thank you. So in the audience tonight, we have Clint Holland, and he's a 50-year resident, and I think he knows that park better than anybody. I think Bill would say, as far as the nuances. I'd like to hear from him what he thinks some of the priorities are out there. I know drainage.
So when I walked in tonight, I saw Clint and I said, I want you to walk the park with me, and I'm gonna have my notebook out, so I know that's pretty nuanced and.
Can we invite him down to say what some of his concerns are for that park?
Sure. Or
Sure.
The
I know
chairs.
bleachers are a mess.
And as he's coming, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I wanted to mention Clint. He has been out there this fall on his hands and knees. And he is a spry young man, as you can see. But he's personally cleaned out some of those drains. And I told him I'd reimburse him for any costs, but he hasn't received yet. But I just want to give him some kudos for that. He also went out there with us. I think, what was that? I think it was last spring. And I wanted to have our public works staff with us that does all the geolocating. And so we had our public works staff come out there with us and checking the map that they had already created. But they didn't have Clint out there when they created it. So we went out there with Clint and they got a much better updated map of where all the drainage facilities should be. And then Clint's, like I said, been personally out there, cleaned some of them and tested them to see if the water goes through and stuff. So I want to just give him a shout out. I also talked to him earlier today. I wanted to go out there and trim the rose bushes with them and see if I can't learn something about rose bushes.
Mr. Holland.
Yes. Things that need to be improved out there. I have sent a lot of pictures to Adam. And of things that are a problem, and also on all the drains. We did fix 3 of the drains. Some of the things that are liabilities, one of them is the lights on the senior field. There are so many lights out, it doesn't meet the requirement by law on the lighting of the fields. And I don't know if they've even tested them out there. in the last several years, but like Little League will come out if they're playing games there, and they'll tell you exactly what needs to be done. But there are 6 lights that have been out, and they're using that facility with those lights out. And there's one light that's just been flipped down for 2 years, and nobody's ever fixed that.
But Clint, so is that your second priority after drainage would be those lights?
Well, me personally, the drainage is an easy deal to take care of. And it's simple. 3 of them we got done in 2 weekends. One of the problems with the drainage, instead of having the drain box there, they filled the drain box with all the rocks. Okay, and Adam's got pictures of all this stuff. We had 3 wheelbarrows of rocks that we had to pull out.
But rather than tell us that, what I'm looking for, we don't know that part like you know that part. So what I'm looking for you to tell us is to give us an idea of priorities, drainage, lights, what else?
Some of the irrigation stuff that needs to be fixed that they haven't fixed. And they got froze back a couple of years ago and they never got fixed, especially on the senior field.
Okay.
Right now, no one's winterized the place up there.
And what does that mean?
Well, that means if you have temperatures below 28 degrees, you can freeze some of that equipment up there, and you're talking about damage. Just think of your house if you don't fix some of the stuff that, you have to wrap and do on some of the older houses. So there's a lot of stuff like that that needs to be done right now before we get some real cold weather.
So that's even a priority then before drainage is winterizing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then also I walked through with not Robert, what's the other guy, Don?
Don.
I walked through with him on a lot of things in the bathrooms. You gotta remember there's water in the bathrooms all the time, even when you turn the water off. And the heater that's there is blowing out. And that needs to be fixed right away.
It no longer works.
When he turned it on, it blew the fuse, yeah. Yeah.
So the heater works, but there's an electrical problem.
Well, no, I think it's the heater.
Okay.
Something's wrong with the heater. And that needs to be fixed. And by the way, those type of heaters there can't be fixed here. You gotta send them to Portland.
Okay.
Okay, because that happened once before and they had to send them up there. So that's a priority right now to get taken care of. Being sure that all the water is drained from all the fields. And how you drain it is all the way down to the senior field. There's just the lowest spot on the field. You just put a quick coupler in there and it'll drain for about 10-15 minutes and it'll clean everything. Now you have to go open some of the drains. Like softball fields, you have to open them up so the water gets out and falls into the drains. So that's a big priority right now.
Okay.
And then in the concession stand, I went in there with Don to be sure there's heat on there because you guys already paid 1 year for refixing the bathrooms when all the stuff in the attic because they didn't have enough heat in there. All the water froze up there. Remember that a couple of years ago?
No.
Remember that, Bill? Yeah,
Yeah.
more than a couple of years ago, yeah. So the thermostat, there is no thermostat there. It's all been ripped out. And so we couldn't even check to see what the temperature was or anything. You gotta put a whole new thermostat in there, something.
So there's no heat in the concession stand.
We couldn't tell when we were there because it wasn't running. You just need to put a new controller in there. And you need to maintain so that you don't have freezes up in the attic. You need to have
They had a
that.
new furnace in there, put in 2010.
Councilor Christopher, if I can, what I would suggest doing, so number one. A main tenet and agreement that we have is protecting your asset, so. The number one thing we do is typically with somebody knowledgeable and if there's a handoff and then Clint would be fantastic. We go through a detailed checklist. We use a program called Maintenance Care. So it's basically a software program that you get on your phone or you guys get a printout for. It can be part of that GM report once a week. And basically we list every item that needs to be fixed. And then any preventative items like filters and winterizing and what's the status of that, so you can get a report, you can look, anybody from the city works can look up and go, oh, wait, they winterized today, cool, great, you know, or they can see the work list.
Yeah.
So it's a great tool that we use, so I would suggest we'll get that going. We'll walk through, point in detail list for Clint. Okay,
Thank you, Clint. That's really what I wanted is, we have the advantage of having a local Kaiser resident who has worked with that park for what, 50?
50 years.
50 years on that park. So there's no one that knows that park. There's no one that knows that park, like Clint Holland knows that park. So I am happy to hear you say that you're going to work with him, and that, I mean, you can tell, you know, Bill's not an expert on the parks, he's got a million other jobs to do. But Clint doesn't. Clint is the retired Kaiser Little League Parks guru. So.
I'd like to add for one more thing. Bill is right about drains that they put in on that one field. Nightmare, and it didn't even need to be done. What they had needed to do is fix the existing drains.
Yeah.
So 3 of them now work. And I need Bill's help with his staff to fix the other 2.
No,
One
no.
of them's the main drain,
We just hired someone.
you know, but he's got the equipment that I need to get the cameras to find out how to get that fixed.
Well, we hired someone.
Okay,
Okay, thank you, Clint.
yes, thank you, all right. Give me one more.
You're hired, Clint.
So this year, I think, the message is, making sure everything has been, looked at and, bringing things up to code. In that facility, many things were done over time that, Bill put it well, we're not consulted with the city. So bringing everything up to code, which is what your organization does, you work everything on code and, to, industry standards. And that's going to be probably your number one thing this year. What we'll need from you at the end of the season is what couldn't get done this year and needs to go into next year. To show us progress that will help encourage us, and also understand what the realistic expectation is for year 2 with that facility. We just don't know. But as you get into it and you get things up to code, you know, we get this, parts that you're going to be having the concession stand. This is all, professional grade, commercial grade, as it should be. This will help us understand what, and also our community understand what's next. So we can grow this and show the progress as we're going. Is that a fair statement? Okay. So with that, the bigger things, you know, the recommendations for facility capacity for the bigger projects and so forth. Also bear in mind that we are eligible for state parks grants, and we have a city manager who's really good at writing those grants. It's been very successful. And so if there's a capital improvement that would, serve our region, we have staff members who are very good at writing grants to bring those dollars here, because the Salem Kaiser area really, really matters. And we want to make sure the state invests in this area as they rightfully should. So we want to give them every opportunity to do so. Okay.
Thank you. If there's no more discussion there, I think the last thing that I would go back to is the discussion about the tourist tax, and maybe I'll throw back to Millie. He's got a lot of great knowledge here, but just, you know, I think I'm hearing the near-term vision, but I think we would all love to see this facility, let's call it 5 years, 10 years, to really, really be a show plate. And there's a realistic way of getting there is trying to create a money that we can tap into. We heard from Joey and Salem, what they've done there that's been successful. So throwing back, Billy, anything you want to add there as in the discussion?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think one of the, you know, the the biggest benefits that we can bring outside of just operating the park and being great at that and giving kids more opportunities at the ball fields is looking out strategically at not only a facilities plan, but how can we maximize the opportunity there and within Kaiser in general. And I think, we've talked about our advisory arm a little bit. We also have a development arm that's able to, on the advisory side, we can look at, what other market opportunities are there besides just a little league field. How do we start planning ahead for, certain renovations? Is it just the lights, or does it make sense to do things on a bigger scale? And bringing the advisory arm in to give us some of those scenarios and showing what priorities make most sense and what's going to bring the biggest ROI for the city, not only financially, but from an impact standpoint as well. And, we always like to say serve more, serve better. And, how can we help Kaiser serve more kids, serve more residents, serve those residents better, give them more opportunities, not only at the ball fields, but, you guys have a up and coming opportunity at the soccer fields as well, and that site. And, we would like to lean in and really be your partners there to help understand or help, facilitate an understanding of what's next, what could be, but also how can we find ways to pay for those things.
Sounds like a fantastic wrap up. Any questions from council to? Okay, sorry. Oh, yeah, is that it? Okay, just make these. Yeah, that was good. Okay, well, just one more.
It's not even a question, it's just a comment. By the time that kids are on those fields and playing, we've seen a park that was not in good shape become considerably worse shape over the last 4 years. I feel commitment to our parents and our children that they play in a park that is not just well managed, but well maintained for life and safety. I don't want those kids on fields that are unsafe. I don't want them on bleachers that are unsafe. I don't want them in bathrooms that are unsafe. I want to be able to look our parents in the eyes and tell them, those are our kids, and we're taking care of our kids.
This is great. This is the kind of communication that we need, and that certainly would be what we would intuitively do, but
before they set a foot on those fields. Thank you.
Any closing thoughts from other council members or questions? Councilor Frost.
I just want to say part of my hospitality experience is being the general manager for Guthrie Restaurant downtown, and you were very frugal in those purchases, so I appreciate that we share responsibility. You were not looking to get the Taj Mahal of nacho warmers.
Yeah. We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out some the volume, but we'll grow it as responsibly. All right, Ms. Brown, any final thoughts or questions? All right, the time is 7:49. Thank you everyone for this very constructive conversation. We appreciate everybody for pitching in and look forward to moving this process forward. All right, with that, we are adjourned. What do you think? Anything for Becky? That's what's the thing. Yeah, so many.